Hi, it's me, Florence.
And I'm Erica.
So this is reaction time. Yay! So before we start, don't forget to subscribe my channel.
And hit that bell button below
For
para
still-
ma-notify ka sa mga bagong uploads.
Yes!
So for today's video, we're going to react on the video created by Crash Course about Aristotle and Plato.
Head set up. And now let's begin.
Pop quiz. Are you a Platonist or an Aristotelian? An idealist or an empiricist? Do you think up neat rules to describe the universe and then try to fit data into your theory? Or do you observe the world and draw conclusions from what you see? Do you trust math or your senses? Before you decide,
So at the beginning, he asked if are you idealist or empiricist, a Platonist or Aristotelist? On what side are you?
Oh, for me, I'm a Aristotelist.
So
Yes.
automatically,
I
I'm
trust
a
my
Platonist.
senses. I trust my senses more than my math. Yeah.
So let's continue.
let's take a trip to urban Athens, circa 399 BCE. Who was this smarty pants? Socrates didn't have a single clearly formulated natural philosophy. He didn't even study nature on not claiming to know things. But he asked a lot of questions, which his name is attached to the Socratic method, in which you constantly ask questions so that students can steadily break down a big problem into smaller parts they can test hypotheses against. You're right. But Socrates' biggest legacy may be his student, Plato, and his student Aristotle. Different.
So, magbigay tayo ng example ng Socratic method. Kunwari,
Example of Socratic method, in which Socratic method is a continuously asking of questions. So let's begin.
saan ka na naman pupuntang bata ka?
May practice kami.
Ano pinapractice mo?
Project, diorama, pinapagawa ni Sir Feli.
Sino mga kasama mo?
Mga kaibigan ko.
Sino mga kaibigan?
Mga kagrupo ko, syempre.
Sino mga kagrupo yan?
Bakit kasi kailangan malaman?
Socratic method tayo!
Yun. So that is an example of Socratic method. So, yeah. So let's continue.
Conclusions about the world. We know a lot about Socrates thanks to his students. Chiefly, Plato founded a physical school called the Academy to train Athenians in how to think like Socrates. It's had a big impact on Plato, whose best-known works include Republic, in which Socrates defines justice and argues for rule by a philosopher king instead of democracy. Plato had a big impact on thinking about thinking. Today, we still use Plato's name for a place of philosophical learning, academy, to describe the concept of higher education in general. The only Greek who wrote more philosophy than Plato was Plato's own star student and rival, Aristotle.
So, Plato is a student of Socrates and Aristotle is the student of Plato. Both Plato and Aristotle are inspired by Socratic method.
In short, it's like his student, his student, his student, his student, and his student. So now let's continue.
Observed the world and then came up with a theory that explained it. At Plato's Academy in Athens for 20 years until Plato died. To his son, Alexander. And you know this particular Alexander, he decided to conquer the entire earth. But from the very beginning, scientists have served bad, heartless dudes. Aristotle, a man who literally wrote the book Ethics, pushed his most famous pupil to invade Persia, kill barbarians, and become a brutal warlord. And his school was called the Peripatetics.
Based on this video, we already know the difference between Academy and Lyceum, where Academy was developed by Plato and Lyceum was developed by Aristotle. So what's the difference between the two? So let's start.
Let's start with the Lyceum. Lyceum is also known as Peripatetic school, which came from the Greek word peripatos, which means stroll, since Aristotle liked to stroll on the tree-filled
Yes.
rows.
While academy or academia came from the word hekadamus or acadamus, since academy was a public school, and guys, this is a trivia where academy was the first university in the world. So let's continue.
Meaning walkie. and thus informal, not like the academy. It was on the heavens, on the soul, which is actually an amazing book of protobiology meets psychology, and his school's highly influential set of textbooks on natural philosophy called physics. How did Aristotle answer our big questions about physics, such as what was stuff and where are we? He posited a complete system joining the elements and the heavens.
So as a physicist,
So basically, it is where physics started.
yeah.
Let's continue.
This became the basis for European thought about the physical world for 2,000 years. Let's go. For Plato, the cosmos was perfect. It were perfectly geometric, platonic solids, each as the shape of the whole universe, like a giant celestial set of D&D dice. Plato's theory of the heavens stated that the wandering stars, that is, the planets, followed a path of uniform circular motion. See that Mars, for one, seemed to jump backwards, showing retrograde motion. Did Aristotle build on Plato's system? Aristotle's cosmology was abstract too, but he attempted to make sense of observations about the world. Earth was the heaviest element, so it was the center of the cosmos. Water was lighter than Earth, so oceans rested on top of the Earth. So far, so good. Air's natural state is above water. That also checks out. Fire is on top of air, which is a little weird, but it does go up, I guess. And way out past these four terrestrial spheres, out past the moon, spun the stars, acting according to their nature as ethereal or perfect circle-moving objects. And nowhere, anywhere in this theory was a void. Nature abhors a vacuum. Inner elements were active.
Today, we all know that the sun is at the center of the solar system. Well, before, Plato claims that the earth is at the center of the universe and everything revolves around it in circular motion. Plato also stated that Mars is a star, which is, we all know, that wrong.
Yes, because Mars was a planet. While Aristotle, he says that everything was composed of different elements. First was the land, which is in the middle. Next was the water, since water was less dense than land. Next was the air and fire. Let's continue.
Spheres, each with a natural tendency. This confirmed the average Bronze Age farmer's experience. Air. Roots go down into the earth and branches go up into the air. His theories also worked for comparisons. Why does a book fall faster than a piece of paper? Because it has more earth in it. Aristotle could even explain natural phenomenon. Why does
Okay, so he asked if why does book fall faster than paper?
Than a sheet of paper. So Aristotle book has more earth in it.
Yeah, but as a physics student, we already know that force of gravity is the main source of why does the book or an object falls.
It is also mass is also a factor.
Yeah, since force is equal to mass times acceleration. Okay, let's back.
soul, which let them. The rational soul explained why we can think and reflect on ideas on top of all that other stuff. On one end, he placed plants, then worms, and so on. These low animals bore their offspring cold, dry, and in thick eggs. The higher animals made warm and wet babies. In how the world worked? Most of the time. Not only did Aristotle come up with a complete theory of everything, he wrote it down. He was a prolific author, and a significant percentage of his texts have survived. Or taking a page from Socrates.
Okay.
Is that a trick question? Next time
So
we'll...
Florence,
So,
are you a Platonist or Aristotelist?
wait, let me think. I think it's very hard to choose between the two. George Berkeley is both idealist and also empiricist. So, we're an idealist and empiricist. Actually, guys, I have a joke. I'm not a Platist.
You use balls.
Yeah, I use bulls. So, if I use mag, so I'm a maga.
Bye.
Hey, any